Be the Talk, episode 358, featuring Matt Coatney. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Matt Coatney. Matt, are you ready to talk?
I am. Thanks so much.
Matthew Coatney is a technology executive, author, and speaker who brings advanced technologies to market in the fields of artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, and cloud. He works with corporations, startups, and other organizations to bring their best ideas to life. Matt Coatney, welcome to the talk.
Thank you very much. Very excited to be here, Nathan.
Your talk is called AI as a Force for Good. And we start out and you have these great word pictures. Like me, you referenced the Jetsons in your talk with Rosie the robot, which is kind of this automated version of artificial intelligence versus the nefarious version HAL versus a more updated version about 10 years ago, Wall-E, the movie that came out. So loved all those word pictures. Matt, please take us behind the talk.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. You know, the talk really started when I came to the realization as a technologist, I made a lot of assumptions about what people knew or thought they knew around advanced technology, especially AI. And as I started talking to colleagues and friends and others, came to find that there's really just a gap of understanding about what it is, what it isn't, and that it is a tool that put to good use can really do some wonderful things. And so it really was more intended to be a good news story to help combat or to deflect some of the more negative hype-based press that's out there. And so really wanted to get that message across to folks.
Well, and that really came through. So it's very positive. It's very reassuring. You know, in my kind of privileged seat right here behind this microphone, I've talked to a number of people about artificial intelligence who gave talks about that. And I've talked to a number who talk about more augmented intelligence. So for the purposes of this conversation, I mean, what's your thought of augmented intelligence? A number of people that I've talked to basically have said, you know, artificial intelligence is a little bit of an oxymoron. When you really dial in there, what we're really talking about is augmented intelligence. Do you share that view? What's your thought?
Absolutely, I do. Most of the media and entertainment focuses on this super intelligent AI force that's either for good or ill. But the reality is, no, it's much more of a decision support tool. That's where I've spent most of my life building systems to help people do better things, to do greater things quicker. Whether it's a drug scientist looking to find that cure to cancer 5-10 years quicker, or helping to fight global hunger. You know, all these different kinds of stories. It's really more about taking the best of what technology can offer and marrying it with the best that we as humans can bring.
Well, you had all kinds of great examples. I mean, you were talking about flying drones into war zones to help people instead of harm them, and airlifting tablets to spread literacy in challenged areas, all kinds of neat little examples there. Now, I'm trying to remember this. Is it the convergence? Is that the thing that when the artificial intelligence matches human intelligence? Is that what it's synergy?
Yeah, that's one word for it. The singularity.
The singularity.
Right.
I was orbiting around the singularity. So when do you think the singularity is going to happen, Matt?
Great question. You know,
or just kick me, just punch me if you're sick of answering these.
Not at all. It's one of those funny things with exponential curves. It's further than we think until it happens. So I've seen amazing
like Twitter going south.
Exactly. So yeah, 20 years ago, I started in this field, and the progress we have made has been absolutely tremendous. We've got a long way to go. You know, I think we're probably a good 10 or 15 years away from having some pretty impressive capabilities that make it hard to distinguish what's human and what's not. And it really helps us as people define what makes us unique. It's raising the bar for our humanity and what we value and what we offer to the world. And that's a good thing in my mind.
Well, maybe I'm a little bit of a simpleton here, Matt, because something like bots on web pages and social media autoresponders and things like that. I've actually been fooled a couple of times with someone's virtual assistant who is more of an artificial assistant and already setting up appointments here on Be the Talk very, very quickly. I said, wow, your assistant is really on the ball. And then I realized finally what was going on. And there have been a couple of situations like that. What's your advice as to, I think what's becoming valuable already right now, especially in the TEDx world and business and in general, are the things that make us human. So empathy and storytelling and connecting and being purposefully strategically extroverted to add value to other people when necessary. What's your thought about which technologies that save time are worth using, and then which technologies that can kind of mimic interaction but can be a little bit of a backfire when the person finds out it's not a human? Do you have like a personal line for the things that you employ?
Sure. No, that's a great question.
It was a little bit of a clumsily asked and articulated question, but I wanted to go there anyway from
sure,
someone in the field every day.
Not at all. Absolutely. To your point, I think the businesses that I've worked with have, and individuals as well, rush to the people side of the equation because, quite frankly, for most businesses, the most expensive piece from an operating expense are the people. And so you hear that's driverless trucks as one example, certainly call centers, things of that nature. What I've found instead to be more effective, and you mentioned that point about automated intelligence or augmented intelligence, is that rather than building a tool to replace someone, build a tool to make them do their work more effectively, more efficiently, take some of the more mundane work out so that they can focus on higher value activities, research, customer service, and so forth. So it's really about replacing the menial so that you can get more high value. So good examples of that I see being effective is automating a lot of the back end processes around billing and fulfillment and the transactional nature of things, not so much targeting the people. So hopefully that helps.
Automating transactions and things like that, as opposed to things where there's a assumed level of social intelligence or just human to human interaction.
There is a great story to make you feel better. There's the Turing Prize is a test to see if someone can be fooled by an AI technology, and one of the judges at the Turing Prize was duped into starting a conversation with a young lady in a foreign country for 4 months before he realized that young lady was in fact a bot.
Wow.
So even the best can be fooled.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a funny little realization when you find that out. I would imagine that experience is going to become more and more common for people in more and more surprising scenarios.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, how did you get started in this field? I mean, you've been doing this for 20 years, obviously very rewarding for you. What was the turning point for you?
Sure, it was. As in much of my life, it was in hindsight, there was a path. During it, it was much more just following the flow. So I love complex systems of all types. And so I was driven into the life sciences, biochemistry, have an undergrad degree in that, and just fell in love with complex systems and understanding them and helping to model them. And that led me naturally into the computer science space and some of these algorithms. Back then, we had to roll our own to build our own tools. None of the frameworks that exist today were a twinkle in anybody's eye 20 years ago. So it made it a lot of fun, but a lot of work. So it's great to see how more mature and how much more accessible these technologies are to really any size business.
Well, we were talking about Windows 95 20 years ago, right? Not quite a C prompt, not DOS prompt, or was it for you?
Oh, it dates back even further than that for me, where I started on a An old DOS program. That's right.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Matthew Coatney. His talk is called Artificial Intelligence as a Force for Good. And we're going to talk more about the your side of things, Talk Universe. We're going to pivot over to the Blitz round, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back with the Blitz round with Matt Coatney. His talk is called AI as a Force for Good. I'm going to ask Matt a series of either or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Matt, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I applied in a roundabout way. They were interested in getting more technology talks, so actually I missed the deadline. But they made an exception, and there I was.
Well, I love that. Good for you. It helps to be in demand for sure. What advice do you have for other people to get accepted?
Sure. As trite as it sounds, focus on what makes you, and what makes your story different. And that doesn't mean you have to be overly extroverted, rambunctious, or creative. We are all creative. We all have a story to tell. So focus on that. Don't worry so much about the showmanship of it. The coaches help you with that, which is wonderful. Yeah.
What's a tip, tool, or technique that you would recommend that helped you?
Practice. I am very much a speaker that does not follow a script, and I've gotten very good at that. It took some forced practice to become more methodical about that, and that was key for me. That rehearsing. Yeah.
Were you an opener, were you a closer, or were you right in between?
I was right in the middle. It's right in between a tearjerker and a artistic performance. So it was very much a...
So that's a tough act to follow. Did they have an MC? Did someone kind of reset the atmosphere, or was that kind of on you?
They did. No, they did great. The particular TEDx event that I'd been in had been running for several years before the year that I did it, and they did a spectacular job, really professionally done.
Good to know. And in case you're listening and you're kind of wondering what I'm alluding to, you can listen to other MCs that I have interviewed on Be the Talk, because that's a really important dynamic that I had never had explained to me until I got real advanced coaching, and then I still knew very little about it. So I've made it a point to talk to MCs and talk about those invisible dynamics that are very, very real when you are getting ready to go on to speak. Matt, what is the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Sure. It's a very small world. Right after my talk and right before my talk, I met a friend of mine that I did judo in college with, so probably 15 years prior to the talk.
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Absolutely. Wow. And also my old high school English teacher was also there. So it was great to connect with old friends.
That's amazing. So, what was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Ooh, that I had to cut out. So many. The examples, I'll tell you, I stepped back on the technology side of it. I wanted to share more about how this all worked, but just with time constraints in the audience, we kept it a bit higher level. So that was tough, but I think the right choice to make. What
advice do you have to kind of kill your darlings, as the writer said, and be able to make time?
Remember your audience. Remember your audience. That's the key in all of this. Write for them, not for you. Yeah.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation, this Blitz round with Matt Coatney. His talk is called AI as a Force for Good. And if you want to find out more about that talk, you can actually watch it on our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com, or you can type it into YouTube, as well as you can link in with Matt, find out what he is up to, or you can go to his website at MatthewCoatney.com. Matthew, two T's, Coatney, MatthewCoatney.com. And we will be back in just a moment for the final word of advice from Matt Coatney. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back. It's time for the final word of advice with Matt Coatney. What is it?
Final word of advice. As trite as it sounds, be yourself. There's enough of everybody else in the world.
That's for sure. Matt Coatney, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Nathan.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.